A late-night encounter. The aroma of grilled onions and sizzling meat drifted through the cool evening air as Jack Chen wiped down his food cart for what felt like the 1,000th time that night. Times Square's neon glow painted the stainless steel surface of his hot dog cart in shifting colors, a kaleidoscope of urban life that had become all too familiar over the past 5 years. "Last call for the best dogs in Manhattan," he shouted half-heartedly, knowing most of the passing crowd was more interested in their phones than his food. At 11:45 p.m., he was ready to pack up and head home to his cramped studio apartment. The night sky suddenly erupted in a brilliant flash of purple light, causing Jack to stumble backward. His first thought was that one of the massive billboards had short-circuited, but the light seemed to come from above, casting strange shadows across the concrete canyon of skyscrapers. A sleek object descended from the heavens, its surface rippling like liquid mercury. It was roughly the size of a delivery van, but shaped like nothing Jack had ever seen before. The craft touched down silently in a nearby alley, sending papers and debris swirling in an unseen wind. "I really need to cut back on those energy drinks," Jack muttered to himself, rubbing his eyes. But when he opened them again, the strange craft was still there. The side of the vessel split open with a soft hiss, revealing 3 figures silhouetted against an interior glow that shifted between shades of blue and violet. As they stepped into the street light, Jack's jaw dropped. They were unmistakably female in form, but definitely not human. The tallest one had skin that shimmered like mother of pearl, with hair that floated and twisted as if suspended in water. Her eyes were pools of swirling galaxy patterns. The second was shorter, with deep azure skin covered in glowing patterns that pulsed like circuit boards. The third appeared almost human, except for the delicate crystalline structures that grew from her shoulders and the fact that she seemed to phase slightly in and out of visibility with each breath. They approached his cart with fluid grace, moving as if gravity was merely a suggestion rather than a law. The pearl-skinned one spoke first, her voice carrying harmonics that made Jack's spine tingle. "Greetings, Earth Merchant. I am Commander Lyra. These are my associates, Nova and Echo." She gestured to the blue-skinned woman and the semi-transparent one in turn. "We detect most intriguing chemical signatures emanating from your mobile nutrition dispensary." Jack blinked several times before finding his voice. You mean my hot dogs?" Nova, the blue-skinned woman, leaned forward to examine the grill, her patterns glowing brighter with curiosity. "Hot dogs? You serve canines at high temperatures." No, Jack quickly explained, falling back on his bender's instinct to make a sale, even to extraterrestrial customers. "They're not actually dogs. They're just called that. They're made from... Actually, maybe I shouldn't get into what they're made from. Would you like to try one?" The 3 visitors exchanged looks, conducting some sort of silent communication. Echo, the semi-transparent one, nodded. "We have journeyed far to study Earth's customs. Sampling your local sustenance would provide valuable data." Jack prepared 3 hot dogs with his signature touch, grilled onions, sauerkraut, and his special sauce that had won him a small but loyal following among the late-night crowd. His hands trembled slightly as he handed them over. The aliens examined the food with scientific precision before simultaneously taking their first bites. Their reactions were immediate and dramatic. Laura's hair burst into a rainbow of colors, while Nova's circuit patterns began dancing in complex geometric shapes. Echo became completely visible for the first time, her crystalline structures chiming like wind bells. "By the cosmic core," Lyra exclaimed. "These sensations, they're extraordinary. We have nothing like this in the Centauri Collective. The interplay of flavors, the textural variables, the temperature gradient." Nova was scanning her hot dog with a device that appeared from nowhere. "This is beyond our most advanced pleasure simulators." Echo finished her hot dog in 2 more bites, then turned to Jack with an intense gaze. "According to our research, the sharing of food holds great cultural significance on Earth. Is this correct?" Well, yeah, I guess so, Jack replied, still trying to process the situation. Laura stepped forward, her galaxy eyes swirling faster. Then you should know that in our culture, providing sustenance of such profound impact automatically initiates a courtship protocol. As you have gifted all three of us with this transformative experience, we are now bound by Centaurian law to pursue romantic relations with you. Jack's mouth went dry. I'm sorry, what? Before he could get clarification, police sirens began wailing in the distance, growing closer by the second. Red and blue lights started reflecting off the surrounding buildings. It seems our arrival has drawn attention, Nova observed. This is less than optimal. Echo grabbed Jack's arm, her touch sending pleasant tingles through his body. You must come with us. The situation requires immediate relocation. But my cart, my apartment, I can't just, Jack stammered. Your life is about to become far more interesting than hot dog vending, Lyra assured him, leading him toward their craft. We have much to teach each other. As Jack found himself being ushered into an alien vessel by three beautiful extraterrestrial women who apparently considered themselves his fiancées, he had one last coherent thought. He really should have read the fine print on that street vendor's license more carefully. The mercury-like door sealed behind them just as police cars rounded the corner, and Jack Chen's ordinary life officially came to an end. His adventure in interstellar romance was just beginning. Space Apartment Blues. Inside the alien vessel, Jack's world turned upside down, literally. The interior seemed to defy gravity, with corridors that curved impossibly and surfaces that shifted between solid and translucent. His new alien companions led him through what appeared to be a living space, though everything pulsed with soft bioluminescence. Welcome to the Stellar Wanderer, Lyra announced, her pearl-like skin reflecting the ambient light. Our temporary home while studying Earth. It's cozy, Jack offered, trying not to show his disorientation as he watched furniture emerge from and disappear into the walls. His hot dog cart seemed like a distant memory now, abandoned on that New York street corner. Nova approached with what looked like a floating tablet. We should begin the preliminary courtship procedures. According to our database of Earth customs, this normally involves sharing personal information and establishing compatibility metrics. Hold on, Jack raised his hands. Can we back up a bit? I'm still processing the whole automatic engagement thing. On Earth, people usually date for a while before even thinking about marriage. Echo materialized beside him, causing him to jump. Date. Ah yes, the human ritual of shared activities to determine mate suitability. We can accommodate this practice. Her crystalline structures chimed softly as she spoke. That's not exactly what Jack started, but was interrupted by a loud alarm. Red light flooded the chamber. Proximity alert, Nova announced, her circuit patterns flashing rapidly. Earth authorities have established a perimeter around our landing zone. They're deploying what appear to be military units. Through the ship's translucent walls, Jack could see SWAT teams taking position behind vehicles, while helicopters circled overhead. News vans were already arriving, their satellite dishes extending skyward. Well, this is just perfect, Jack muttered. Any chance we could, I don't know, become invisible or something? Lyra's galaxy eyes sparkled. The Stellar Wanderer does possess cloaking capabilities, but engaging them now would only cause more panic. Perhaps, she paused, studying Jack thoughtfully. Perhaps you could assist us in diplomatic relations? Me? Jack laughed nervously. I'm just a hot dog vendor. I barely passed high school diplomacy, which isn't even a real subject. But you understand Earth customs, Echo pointed out, and you've already demonstrated remarkable adaptability by not losing consciousness upon first contact. That's a pretty low bar, Jack replied, but he was already thinking about the situation. Look, if we're going to avoid an interstellar incident, we need to show them we're not a threat. And maybe explain why you've kidnapped a civilian. Kidnapped? Nova looked offended, her blue skin darkening. We're adhering to proper courtship protocols. Right, about that, Jack ran a hand through his hair. We're going to need a better explanation than your hot dogs were so good we had to marry you. The government might not appreciate alien-human relationships being established over street food. The aliens huddled together, having one of their silent conversations. Jack took the moment to peek through the translucent wall again. The military presence had grown, and he could see men in dark suits arriving, definitely government agents. Lyra turned back to him. We have a proposition. We'll reveal ourselves peacefully, but you must act as our cultural ambassador. In return, we'll explain the true nature of our mission here. There's more than just the hot dog thing, Jack asked, suspicious. The Centauri Collective has been monitoring Earth for decades, Nova explained. We were sent to establish first contact, but our methods were, perhaps less formal than our superiors intended. You went off script for a hot dog, Jack said flatly. Echo's form flickered with what might have been embarrassment. Our species has evolved beyond the need for physical sustenance. We absorb energy directly. But stories of Earth's culinary delights have become something of an obsession in our culture. When we detected your food cart, we couldn't resist, Lyra finished. The marriage proposal was genuine, if precipitous, but our primary mission remains diplomatic relations between Earth and the Collective. Jack looked between the three aliens, then back at the growing military presence outside. His whole life, he dreamed of doing something meaningful, something bigger than selling hot dogs in Times Square. Now the fate of human-alien relations might depend on him. Okay, he said finally, I'll help, but we do this my way. First, we need to contact them before they decide to start shooting. Second, we need a better story than the truth. No offense, but we should probably keep the marriage thing quiet for now. The aliens nodded in agreement, though Jack noticed they all wore expressions that suggested they weren't giving up on the courtship idea. And third, he added, if we survive this, you're all going to explain exactly what being married to 3 alien diplomats would entail, because I have a feeling it's more complicated than sharing an apartment and arguing about whose turn it is to do the dishes. Oh, much more complicated, Lyra confirmed, her hair swirling with amusement. For instance, have you ever heard of the Centaurian soul-binding ceremony? It involves quantum entanglement of consciousness streams. Let's focus on not getting arrested or shot first, Jack suggested quickly. Now, does this ship have some way to communicate with the people outside, preferably without causing mass panic? Nova waved her hand, and a holographic control panel appeared. We can project your image and voice to any surface within range. Though I should warn you, the translation matrix might make you sound slightly more verbose than intended. Great, Jack sighed. I'm about to become the first human to officially speak to an alien civilization, and I might end up sounding like a Shakespeare character. As he prepared to address the assembled authorities, Jack couldn't help but wonder how his life had changed so dramatically in the span of an hour. This morning, his biggest concern had been restocking his condiments. Now he was playing diplomat to prevent an interstellar incident while simultaneously dealing with 3 alien fiancés. He just hoped his improvised plan would work. Otherwise, this could go down as the shortest and most embarrassing first contact in human history, assuming anyone survived to record it. The Great Negotiation. Jack stood before the holographic projector, his heart pounding as he prepared to make history. Any advice before I potentially start an interplanetary war? He asked his alien companions. Try not to mention the marriage proposals, Nova suggested helpfully, her circuit patterns pulsing with what might have been anxiety. Taking a deep breath, Jack nodded to Nova to activate the projection. His image appeared on the side of a nearby building, towering over the assembled military and government personnel. Hello everyone. I'm Jack Chen. You might know me as the guy who sells hot dogs on 42nd Street. He winced at his own awkward introduction. I know this situation looks bad, but I can explain. Sort of. A man in a black suit stepped forward, holding up a megaphone. Mr. Chen, I'm Special Agent Thompson of the FBI. Are you being held against your will? No, actually it's kind of the opposite. I'm here as a cultural ambassador. Jack glanced at Lyra, who gave him an encouraging nod. The beings I'm with are representatives from the Centauri Collective. They're here on a diplomatic mission. A diplomatic mission that began with abducting a hot dog vendor. Thompson's skepticism was clear even through the megaphone. There was a slight cultural misunderstanding, Jack explained, choosing his words carefully. But they're peaceful. They want to establish official contact with Earth's governments. They just got a little distracted by Earth cuisine first. Echo materialized beside him, her crystalline structures glowing softly. Perhaps we should demonstrate our peaceful intentions more directly. Before Jack could respond, the ship's walls became completely transparent, revealing the interior to everyone outside. The crowd gasped collectively at the sight of the 3 alien women and their advanced technology. Well, that's one way to do it, Jack muttered. Raising his voice again, he addressed the crowd. As you can see, they could have stayed invisible or left at any time. They want to talk, and honestly, you're going to want to hear what they have to say. There was a flurry of activity below as officials consulted with each other. Finally, Thompson spoke again. We're prepared to establish a dialogue, but we need assurances. Why should we trust them? Jack thought quickly. Because they could have taken anything they wanted from Earth without us ever knowing they were here. Instead, they chose to reveal themselves over hot dogs. That's either the sign of a peaceful civilization or the worst invasion plan in history. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd, breaking some of the tension. Thompson conferred with someone via earpiece before responding. We're sending up a negotiation team. Any hostile action will be met with immediate response. Understood, Jack replied, then turned to his alien companions. Okay, that went better than expected. Now what? Lyra's hair swirled with excitement. Now we begin true diplomatic relations. But first, she produced what looked like a small crystal. This will help you understand our language directly, without the translation matrix. It's a temporary neural interface. You want to put alien tech in my brain? Jack asked skeptically. It's completely safe, Nova assured him, though you may experience enhanced sensory perception and occasional spontaneous levitation. The what now? Before he could protest further, the negotiation team arrived via helicopter. The ship created an entrance port, and 4 people entered, 2 military officers, a scientist, and Agent Thompson. What followed was the most surreal meeting of Jack's life. He found himself translating not just language, but cultural concepts between humans and aliens. The neural crystal did help, but the occasional floating was disconcerting. So let me get this straight, Thompson said after an hour of discussions. Your civilization wants to establish trade relations with Earth, primarily for our food. Among other things, Lyra confirmed. We offer advanced technology in exchange for culinary knowledge. Your species has developed remarkable expertise in the art of physical sustenance. The scientist, Dr. Rodriguez, looked fascinated. But surely you have more important technological needs to discuss. Energy production, space travel. Oh, we can help with those too. Nova waved dismissively, her patterns forming complex equations in the air. But you don't understand. Our civilization hasn't experienced taste in over 10,000 years. Jack's hot dog contained more sensory information than our most advanced pleasure simulations. Speaking of which, Echo added, we should discuss the matter of our engagement to Jack. Jack frantically made cutting motions with his hands, but it was too late. Thompson's eyebrows shot up. Engagement. It's a cultural misunderstanding, Jack said quickly. They have this tradition about food sharing and, you know what? Not important right now. Let's focus on the technology exchange. But the aliens were not to be deterred. According to Centaurian law, Lyra explained formally, the sharing of transformative sustenance constitutes a binding courtship agreement. We are merely following proper protocols. The room fell silent. Dr. Rodriguez was furiously taking notes. The military officers looked like they were developing headaches. Thompson just stared at Jack. "Mr. Chen," he said finally, "when I woke up this morning, I did not expect to be negotiating both first contact and an interspecies marriage arrangement." "Try being on my end of it," Jack replied. "At least you didn't have to explain why hot dog is made of two beings with faster-than-light technology." The meeting continued for several more hours, covering everything from technology exchange protocols to cultural integration plans. Jack's head was spinning by the end, partly from the complexity of the discussions and partly from the neural crystal's side effects. Finally, Thompson stood. "We'll take these proposals to our superiors. In the meantime, we'll need Mr. Chen to continue acting as liaison." "What about my hot dog cart?" Jack asked. "Mr. Chen, you just helped establish peaceful first contact with an advanced alien civilization. I think your street vending days are over." As the negotiation team prepared to leave, Laura approached Jack. "You handled that very well. Perhaps now we can discuss the soul-binding ceremony." Jack looked at her, then at Nova and Echo, who were both watching him expectantly. "One diplomatic crisis at a time, please. Besides, shouldn't we at least have a proper date first?" The aliens exchanged glances. "Date?" Nova's patterns formed question marks. "Ah yes, the Earth custom of shared recreational activities. We have been researching this. Would you like to participate in a human ritual known as dinner and a movie?" "Sure," Jack said, then remembered who he was talking to. "Wait, with all three of you?" "Of course," Echo chimed. "Though we should probably maintain our human disguises in public. Your society seems unprepared for openly interspecies relationships." Jack couldn't help but laugh. Here he was, about to go on a date with 3 alien diplomats while helping negotiate humanity's first interstellar treaty. And somewhere in Times Square, his hot dog cart was probably still sitting abandoned. "All right," he agreed, "but I'm picking the restaurant. And no more surprise proposals, okay?" The aliens agreed, but their expressions suggested they had plans of their own. As Jack watched Thompson's team depart, he wondered what other surprises his new life had in store. At least he knew one thing for certain: his days of being just another face in the crowd were definitely over. Interstellar dating blues. 1 week after first contact, Jack found himself facing an entirely new challenge, preparing for a triple date with his alien almost fiancés. The government had set him up in a luxury apartment for security reasons, though he suspected it was really to keep an eye on him. "How exactly does one dress for a date with 3 aliens?" he muttered, staring at his closet. A holographic screen materialized beside him, making him jump. "According to our research," Nova's voice came through, her blue-skinned image flickering. "Earth males often wear what you call a suit and tie for formal courtship activities." "Could you maybe warn me before appearing in my bedroom?" Jack asked, clutching his chest. "But we already have a quantum entanglement link," Echo's voice chimed in, her transparent form appearing on his bed. "Technically, we're always connected." "That's not as comforting as you think it is," Jack replied, then froze. "Wait, what quantum entanglement link?" Lyra's pearl-skinned image appeared next to the others. "The neural crystal we gave you during negotiations had some additional features. Standard courtship protocols." Jack pinched the bridge of his nose. "We really need to discuss the concept of consent in human relationships." Nevertheless, he got dressed and headed out to meet his dates in person. They had agreed to try a high-end restaurant where the aliens could experience more of Earth's cuisine. The government was footing the bill, considering it part of diplomatic relations. The 3 aliens waited outside the restaurant, their human disguises perfect save for an otherworldly grace that drew stares from passers-by. Lyra wore an elegant black dress, her now blonde hair styled immaculately. Nova had opted for a blue cocktail dress that somehow incorporated subtle lighting patterns. Echo's outfit seemed to shift between visible and translucent, though thankfully stayed mostly visible. "You all look amazing," Jack managed, suddenly feeling underdressed despite his suit. We studied Earth fashion magazines extensively, Lyra explained, though was still confused about why humans cover their thermal regulation organs with fabric. Let's not have that conversation right now, Jack said quickly, leading them inside. The maitre d' did a double take at the sight of Jack with 3 stunning women, but maintained his professional composure. They were led to a private booth, which Jack suspected had been arranged by their government handlers. Now remember, Jack whispered as they sat down, try to act natural. No discussing quantum physics or interstellar politics. Nova looked disappointed, but I had prepared a fascinating discussion on the relationship between dark matter and human emotional responses. Maybe save that for the second date, Jack suggested. The waiter arrived, and Jack watched with a mixture of amusement and anxiety as his companions ordered. They had apparently memorized Earth cuisine terminology, but didn't quite grasp the context. I would like a lobster the mido, Lyra declared, but could you ensure it's still experiencing cellular mitosis? She means fresh, Jack quickly intervened. Very fresh. Echo studied the wine list with intense concentration. These fermented grape extracts, they alter human consciousness. Subtly, Jack explained, and legally. Fascinating, Nova's eyes lit up literally. We should order several for scientific analysis. The evening progressed with a series of near disasters narrowly averted by Jack's quick thinking. He prevented Nova from scanning other diners' meals with alien technology, stopped Echo from phase-shifting through the table to examine the kitchen, and convinced Lyra that demonstrating her species' ability to metabolize silverware would not improve human-alien relations. Despite the challenges, Jack found himself enjoying their company. Each of his alien companions brought a unique perspective that made even the most mundane topics fascinating. Lyra's diplomatic insights, Nova's scientific curiosity, and Echo's ethereal observations created a conversation unlike any he'd ever experienced. You know, he said as they shared dessert, after explaining that death by chocolate was just a name, this is actually kind of nice. Weird, but nice. We are pleased you find our company satisfactory, Lyra smiled. Perhaps now we can discuss the soul-binding ceremony. Still no, Jack laughed. But I wouldn't mind doing this again. Maybe somewhere less formal next time. Suddenly, that evening was interrupted by a commotion at the restaurant's entrance. Agent Thompson burst in, looking harried. Mr. Chen, we have a situation, he announced, reaching their table. The Centauri High Council has learned about the unofficial nature of first contact. They're sending representatives to investigate. Jack's aliens all paled slightly, their human disguises flickering momentarily. Is that bad? Jack asked, though he already knew the answer. The High Council is quite traditional, Lyra explained carefully. They may not approve our methods. Or our romantic entanglement with a human, Nova added. Or our unauthorized sharing of quantum entanglement technology, Echo chimed in. You told me that crystal was approved, Jack exclaimed. We may have bypassed some minor regulatory procedures, Lyra admitted. Thompson looked like he was developing another headache. The Council's ship will arrive in 48 hours. They're expecting a formal reception with Earth's leaders. And what about us? Jack gestured to himself and his dates. Well, Thompson said with a grimace, you're technically engaged to 3 alien diplomats who went rogue to make first contact over hot dogs. So you'll be expected to explain yourself to some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Jack slumped in his seat. Can I go back to just selling hot dogs? Too late, Echo said cheerfully. You're quantum entangled with us now. Besides, Nova added, her patterns forming what looked like wedding bells, we still haven't discussed the traditional Centaurian honeymoon ritual. It involves temporary molecular dissolution. One crisis at a time, Jack interrupted. Let's focus on not causing an interstellar diplomatic incident first. As they left the restaurant, after Nova insisted on taking samples of every dish for cultural research, Jack couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of his situation. A month ago, his biggest worry was getting a better spot for his hot dog cart. Now he was caught between Earth's first steps into the galactic community and a complex romantic entanglement with 3 alien women who seemed to have their own ideas about relationship progression. At least things can't get any more complicated, he said to himself. Echo materialized beside him. Oh, we forgot to mention, the High Council will expect you to demonstrate your worthiness through the traditional trials of union. The what now? Don't worry, Lyra assured him. Most candidates survive at least one of the challenges. Jack looked at Thompson. Any chance we can blame this all on food poisoning? Sorry, Chen, Thompson replied. You're in this one all the way. Though I have to admit, this is the most interesting first contact scenario in human history. As they headed back to his apartment to prepare for the High Council's arrival, Jack wondered if perhaps he should have gone into accounting like his mother suggested. But watching his 3 alien companions argue about proper courtship protocols while simultaneously planning for an interstellar diplomatic crisis, he realized he wouldn't have it any other way. Even if he had to face the traditional trials of union, whatever those were, trials and tribulations, the arrival of the Centauri High Council was exactly as dramatic as Jack had feared. Their ship materialized above Central Park in a display of light and energy that made the first contact incident look subtle. It resembled a massive crystal cathedral floating in the sky, making Earth's most advanced technology look like children's toys in comparison. Well, that's not intimidating at all, Jack muttered, adjusting his tie for the 10th time. He stood on a hastily constructed platform alongside Earth's dignitaries, his 3 alien companions beside him in their true forms. Remember, Lyra whispered, her pearl skin shimmering with anxiety, address them as most luminous ones and try not to make any sudden movements. And whatever you do, Nova added, her circuit patterns forming warning symbols, don't mention the hot dogs. A beam of pure light descended from the crystal ship, materializing into 5 figures that made Lyra, Nova, and Echo look practically human in comparison. The High Council members were beings of pure energy contained within crystalline forms, their voices resonating on multiple frequencies simultaneously. Greetings, beings of Earth, the central figure boomed, causing several pigeons to fall from their perches. We are THA High Council of DAC and TORITHOLAC. Could you maybe dial down the volume? Jack whispered to Echo. I think they're rupturing eardrums in Brooklyn. The council member who spoke seemed to notice the distress and modulated their voice. Our apologies. We sometimes forget the sensitivities of physical beings. They turned their attention to Lyra, Nova, and Echo. Now, explain yourselves. What followed was possibly the most awkward diplomatic meeting in human history. The 3 alien diplomats attempted to explain their actions while carefully avoiding mentions of street food, impromptu marriage proposals, or unauthorized quantum entanglement. So you're saying, one council member summarized, that you chose this particular human as Earth's representative because of his cultural expertise. Jack tried to look culturally expert-like while desperately wishing he'd paid more attention in his high school world history class. He'd have shown remarkable adaptability, Lyra offered, and a unique understanding of human-alien relations. Indeed, another council member moved forward, the crystalline form scanning Jack. Then he won't mind, demonstrating this understanding through the traditional trials of union. The crowd murmured as Jack stepped forward. About these trials, he said, trying to keep his voice steady, what exactly do they entail? 3 challenges, the head council member explained. To prove your worth as both a diplomatic liaison and, they paused, managing to convey amusement despite having no facial features, a potential mate for 3 of our representatives. Oh good, Thompson muttered from nearby, more paperwork. The first trial, as it turned out, involved Jack having to navigate a maze of quantum probability fields. The catch was that every possible outcome happened simultaneously, and he had to choose the correct path based on diplomatic protocol. Left or right, he asked himself, staring at a fork in the reality-bending maze. Both paths are correct, Echo called from outside. And also wrong. It's a quantum superposition. Super helpful, thanks, Jack sighed. Drawing on his years of dealing with picky customers and drunk tourists, he chose paths based on what felt most diplomatically appropriate. Somehow, he made it through with only minor violations of physics. The second trial tested his ability to communicate across cultural barriers. He found himself in a simulation facing beings so alien that the concept of language itself was foreign to them. Remember your street vendor skills, Nova encouraged. How did you handle tourists who didn't speak English? Jack thought back to his years of communicating through gestures, smiles, and the universal language of food. Gradually, he established communication with the alien beings through a complex system of shared experiences and emotional resonance. The final trial, however, was the most challenging. Jack found himself facing a recreation of his first meeting with Lyra, Nova, and Echo, but this time he had to navigate the interaction according to proper Centaurian diplomatic protocols. Okay, he muttered to himself, no hot dogs this time. As he worked through the scenario, Jack realized something important. The chaos of their first meeting, while unorthodox, had led to genuine connections and understanding between their species. Sometimes the best diplomatic relations came from unexpected places. When the trials ended, Jack stood before the High Council, slightly singed and questioning several laws of physics, but successful. You have shown remarkable adaptability, the head council member acknowledged. Perhaps our representatives' unorthodox methods were not entirely misguided. Does this mean you approve of their mission? Jack asked hopefully. We approve of the results, another council member clarified, though we have concerns about the personal entanglements involved. About that, Jack straightened his shoulders. On Earth, we have a saying, the way to someone's heart is through their stomach. Your representatives may have broken protocol, but they also found a way to bridge our cultures through something as simple as sharing food. Isn't that what diplomacy is really about? The council members conferred in frequencies that made Jack's teeth vibrate. Finally, they reached a decision. The courtship protocols may proceed, they announced. However, proper documentation must be filed in triplicate across 11 dimensions. I'll help with the paperwork, Thompson offered, looking slightly dazed. As the High Council prepared to depart, they had one final pronouncement. In recognition of your unique approach to diplomatic relations, we are establishing an official cultural exchange program. Earth cuisine will be studied and shared throughout the collective. Jack blinked. Are you saying? Yes, Lyra beamed. You're now officially the first interstellar food ambassador. Great, Jack laughed. Does this mean I can get my hot dog cart back? Actually, Nova's patterns formed complex business plans. We were thinking something bigger. How do you feel about franchising across the galaxy? As the crystal ship departed in another spectacular light show, Jack found himself standing with his 3 alien almost fiancés, contemplating a future that now included interstellar food courts. You know, he said, when I told my mother I wanted to go into the food service industry, I don't think this is what she had in mind. Speaking of mothers, Echo chimed in, Centaurian tradition requires meeting the family before the soul-binding ceremony. One step at a time, Jack interrupted quickly. Let's figure out the franchise paperwork first, then we can talk about meeting my mother. Of course, Lyra agreed. Though you should know, in our culture, meeting the family involves a ritual mind meld. Jack looked at Thompson. I don't suppose the government's diplomatic protection includes avoiding alien family gatherings. Sorry, Chen, Thompson grinned. You're on your own for that one. Though I expect full reports on the mind meld experience. For diplomatic records, of course. As they left the park, Jack realized his life had become a bizarre mixture of fast food entrepreneurship, interstellar diplomacy, and complicated romantic entanglements. And somehow, it all started with 3 aliens trying a hot dog. At least things can't get any stranger, he said. All three of his alien companions turned to him with knowing looks. What? He asked nervously. Well, Nova began, her patterns forming what looked suspiciously like wedding bells again. Wait until you hear about the traditional Centaurian bachelor party. Family matters. 2 weeks after the High Council's visit, Jack found himself facing his most daunting challenge yet, introducing his alien fiancés to his mother. The fact that they were simultaneously launching the galaxy's first interstellar hot dog franchise somehow seemed less terrifying. Mom, I can explain, Jack began, standing in his parents' modest Queen's apartment. His mother, Helen Chen, stood with her arms crossed, examining the 3 alien women who had maintained their human disguises for the occasion. 3 fiancés. Helen raised an eyebrow. And they're all extraterrestrial. Actually, Mrs. Chen, Nova began, her human form barely containing her excitement, we represent an advanced civilization that. They're from Canada, Jack interrupted quickly. They had agreed to ease his mother into the whole alien thing. Helen's eyes narrowed. Canada doesn't have 3 suns, which is what Echo here just mentioned while admiring my houseplants. Echo's crystalline structures chimed in embarrassment beneath her human disguise. My apologies. I forget that Earth only has 1 sun. How do you manage photosynthesis cycles? We don't photosynthesize, dear, Helen said dryly. Now, would someone like to tell me what's really going on? Jack sighed. Okay, you might want to sit down for this. Over the next hour, Jack explained everything. The first contact, the accidental engagement, the High Council, and their new business venture. To his surprise, his mother took it remarkably well. So let me get this straight, Helen said finally. You're telling me that my son, who couldn't even keep his goldfish alive in high school, is now responsible for introducing Earth cuisine to the galaxy. That's surprisingly accurate, Jack admitted. And you 3, Helen turned to the aliens, who had dropped their human disguises at her request. You want to marry my son because he gave you hot dogs. The hot dogs were merely a catalyst, Lyra explained diplomatically, her pearl skin shimmering. Your son has demonstrated remarkable qualities that make him an ideal mate by Centaurian standards. Plus, he's cute when he's flustered, Nova added, her patterns forming little hearts. Helen stood up and walked to her kitchen, returning with a photo album. Well, if you're going to be part of this family, you should at least see Jack's baby pictures. Mom, no, Jack protested, but it was too late. The aliens crowded around the album, fascinated by Jack's childhood photos. Your larval stage was most adorable, Echo observed, causing Jack to bury his face in his hands. Oh, this is nothing, Helen grinned. Wait until you see his middle school band photos. As his mother bonded with his alien fiancés over his embarrassing childhood memories, Jack's phone buzzed. It was Thompson. Please tell me there's a diplomatic emergency that requires my immediate attention, Jack answered hopefully. Actually, it's about your franchise proposal, Thompson replied. The president just signed off on it. You're officially authorized to establish Earth's first interstellar food service corporation. Hot dogs across the cosmos is now operational. Nova perked up, her patterns forming business graphs. That's still a terrible name, Jack muttered. I like it, Helen chimed in. It's catchy, though you should add some Chinese options to the menu. Your grandfather's dumpling recipe would be perfect for beings with quantum taste buds. Mom, you're taking this surprisingly well, Jack observed suspiciously. Helen shrugged. Honey, I've been telling you for years that you needed to think bigger than your street cart. I just didn't expect bigger to mean galactic. She turned to his fiancés. Now, about this soul-binding ceremony, will there be grandchildren? Mom, actually, Nova began excitedly. Centaurian reproduction involves a fascinating process of energy transference and genetic recombination across multiple dimensions. Let's save that discussion for another time, Jack interrupted quickly. Much later. Just then, a holographic notification appeared in the middle of the living room. Speaking of family, Lyra said, looking slightly nervous, my parents are requesting a traditional meet and greet. Oh, wonderful, Helen exclaimed. When do we meet them? Well, Echo explained, traditional Centaurian family gatherings take place in the seventh dimension, where time and space are more flexible. Jack looked at Thompson through the phone. I don't suppose the government's diplomatic protection covers interdimensional family reunions. Sorry, Chen, you're on your own for this one too, though we will need you to fill out some new customs forms. Apparently, crossing dimensional boundaries requires special tariff considerations. As they discussed the logistics of an interdimensional family gathering, Jack's new franchise, and the increasingly complex wedding plans, Helen pulled her son aside. You know, Jack, she said softly, this isn't exactly what I pictured when I told you to find a nice girl and settle down. I know, Mom. I'm sorry if this is all too weird. Are you happy? She interrupted. Jack looked at his alien fiancés, Lyra discussing diplomatic protocols with Thompson, Nova scanning the photo album with advanced alien technology, and Echo trying to explain quantum physics to his mother's cat. Yeah, he smiled. Weird as it is, I really am. Then that's all that matters. Helen patted his cheek. Though we need to talk about the wedding. I assume we'll need venues in multiple dimensions. Mom, please don't encourage them. They already want to have the ceremony simultaneously across 12 parallel universes. Oh, that means 12 wedding cakes. Helen's eyes lit up. I'm calling your Aunt May. She needs to hear about this. As his mother rushed off to spread the news of his interdimensional wedding plans, Jack couldn't help but laugh. Somehow, his life had gone from selling hot dogs in Times Square to planning a fast food empire across the galaxy while engaged to 3 alien women, and his mother was worried about wedding cakes. Your maternal unit is most understanding, Lyra observed, joining him. Yeah, she is, Jack agreed, though I think she's a little too excited about the whole multiple dimensions thing. Speaking of which, Nova called from across the room, your maternal unit has just agreed to participate in the traditional pre-wedding consciousness merger ritual. She what? Oh, and she's offered to cater the engagement party, Echo added, though we should probably warn her about the effects of Centaurian spices on local space-time. Jack watched as his mother excitedly planned interdimensional wedding details with his alien fiancés, and realized that his life had somehow become even more complicated than he'd imagined possible. But looking at his unlikely family coming together, he wouldn't have it any other way. Even if he did have to figure out how to serve hot dogs in the 7th dimension, love across the cosmos. The day of the interdimensional wedding arrived with all the chaos Jack had expected and then some. Central Park had been transformed into a quantum-stabilized nexus point where multiple dimensions overlapped, allowing guests from both Earth and the Centauri Collective to attend simultaneously. How's my tie? Jack asked Thompson, who had somehow ended up as his best man. And is it still a tie in the 7th dimension? Your tie exists in all quantum states simultaneously, Thompson replied, checking his notes. And according to the briefing, you have exactly 15 minutes before the ceremony begins across all 12 parallel universes. The wedding venue was a sight to behold. Floating crystalline platforms held guests from across the galaxy, while Earth attendees sat in more traditional chairs below. Jack's mother had somehow managed to coordinate with Centaurian event planners to create a celebration that honored both cultures. Though explaining to the caterers how to serve food that existed in multiple dimensions had been interesting. Your hot dog cart has been properly enshrined, Nova announced, appearing beside Jack in her true form. Unlike traditional weddings, the brides weren't hidden away before the ceremony. Centaurian tradition required all participants to spend the previous day quantum entangled. I still can't believe you made my cart into a ceremonial artifact, Jack laughed. It is where our journey began, Lyra reminded him, her pearl skin glowing with pre-wedding radiance. The High Council has designated it as a historic monument of first contact. Speaking of historic, Echo chimed in, quite literally, The franchise's first interstellar location opens tomorrow on Alpha Centauri. Your mother's dumpling recipe is already causing quite a stir. Jack smiled, remembering how his mother had insisted on personally training the quantum-based food replicators to properly prepare her family recipes. She had become something of a celebrity among the Centaurians, who were fascinated by her cooking techniques. "Places everyone," Helen called out, somehow managing to coordinate both Earth and alien attendees with the efficiency of a seasoned general. "The quantum alignment is almost perfect." The ceremony itself was a beautiful blend of traditions. Jack stood on a platform that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions, which took some getting used to. The vows were spoken in both English and the harmonic frequencies of Centaurian language, creating a melody that brought tears to eyes and other sensory organs across species. "Do you, Jack Chen," the officiator began, their form shifting between human priest and Centaurian High Council member, "take these beings to be your quantumly entangled partners, to share consciousness across dimensions, to respect all temporal phases of your relationship, and to love in this universe and all parallel ones?" "I do," Jack replied, his voice echoing across realities, "though I'm still not sure about the molecular dissolution honeymoon." His bride's responses came in harmony, their voices creating a chord that resonated through multiple dimensions. The moment they were pronounced married, the sky above Central Park erupted in a display of light and energy that made the aurora borealis look like a desk lamp. The reception that followed was truly universal. Earth food was served alongside Centaurian energy constructs, while a band played music that somehow worked in multiple dimensional frequencies. Jack's mother had even managed to convince some of the High Council members to try dancing. "Your Earth celebration rituals are most invigorating," one council member observed, attempting to do the Macarena. The franchise's success was already apparent. Delegates from various alien civilizations were approaching Jack with franchise requests, while food critics from across the galaxy sampled Earth cuisine with varying degrees of molecular stability. "We've received applications from 17 different star systems," Nova reported excitedly, her patterns forming expansion charts. "Though we should probably warn the Andromedans about the effects of mustard on their crystalline digestive systems." "And the diplomatic relations are proceeding better than expected," Lyra added. "It turns out sharing food is a universal language." Speaking of universal, Echo materialized with a mischievous chime. "It's time for the traditional Centaurian post-wedding ritual." "Do I want to know?" Jack asked nervously. "Only that it involves temporarily existing as pure energy while traveling through a supernova," Thompson read from his notes. "Don't worry, I've already filled out the necessary interdimensional insurance forms." As Jack prepared to embark on his unconventional honeymoon, he caught sight of his mother talking animatedly with his new Centaurian in-laws about franchise expansion plans and family recipes. "You know," he said to his wives, "when I was just a hot dog vendor in Times Square, I never imagined my life would turn out like this." "Are you complaining?" Nova asked, her patterns forming question marks. "Not at all," Jack smiled. "Though I do have one request." "What's that?" Lyra inquired. "Can we keep at least one version of me in solid form during the honeymoon, just in case someone wants a hot dog?" His wives laughed, the sound creating ripples across multiple dimensions. "Always the businessman," Echo teased. "But don't worry, your mother has already arranged to manage all 12-dimensional versions of the franchise while we're gone." "She's also planning the traditional Earth 1-month anniversary celebration," Lyra added, "though we have to convince her that turning the moon into a giant party venue might be excessive." As the celebration continued around them, Jack looked at his unlikely family, his 3 alien wives, his enthusiastic mother, government agents turned friends, and guests from across the universe, all brought together by a chance encounter at a hot dog cart. "Ready for our next adventure?" his wives asked in harmony. "With you 3, always," Jack replied, "though maybe we should wait until Thompson finishes filing the interdimensional travel permits." "Too late," Echo announced cheerfully. Your mother already expedited them through the High Council. Before Jack could respond, the quantum fields aligned, and he found himself beginning his honeymoon journey across dimensions with his 3 alien brides, leaving behind a celebration that would be remembered across multiple universes and a hot dog franchise that would change the face of intergalactic cuisine forever. And somewhere in Times Square, a humble hot dog cart stood enshrined in quantum crystal, marking the spot where an ordinary vendor's life had become extraordinary, all because 3 alien food critics decided to try an Earth delicacy on a fateful night. As for Jack and his wives, well, that's another story, one that exists simultaneously across 12 dimensions, involves multiple quantum paradoxes, and probably a few more hot dogs. After all, in a universe full of infinite possibilities, sometimes the simplest things, like sharing a hot dog, can lead to the greatest adventures of all.